So next we're gonna do something very similar for when they have a temporary profile image, but the only difference is instead of trying to read it from the system, we're gonna read it from the internet. So let's copy this, paste it here. And this is gonna go to image, profile, and the username, because the username is gonna be like the key we're gonna use to look for that image. And I'm gonna give it a very similar name to this, get, I'm gonna do temp, so get temporary profile image, right? And here we're getting the username, so we don't need the file name because we're getting the file from the internet. So what we're going to return is going to be a little bit more complicated than that. So the first thing is, if you remember, we have this URL. Let's go into the file constant. So you remember we have this URL, right? This is where the file is. So it's going to be something like this and then Rick. Okay. So if we have that, then this is going to return an image. So what we have to do, we have to open this stream, which is going to be opening this URL. So let's go here. First thing is we need to open that URL. So let's call the URL from Java. So URL, URL, and we're gonna call it URL, and we're gonna create a URL. So we're gonna create a new URL, and then of course we have to pass in this URL. We'll call the constructor, pass in the string, and we have to pass in the, remember, if we just pass in this, that's just the main website. So we have to pass in a string after that, like John, okay, to get the actual image. And so once we get the URL, we can pass in the username, which we're getting from the method. So whatever username that the user entered, then we can get the username for that. So I'm gonna import that. So now we have a URL, right? So once we have the URL, that's just having the URL. We have to actually open that URL. Okay. So next, I'm gonna create a byte array output stream so that I can store all the data that I'm gonna get from that URL. Let's do byte array output stream, and then set this equal to new byte array output stream. Okay. So this is where we're gonna store all the data that's gonna come from the actual URL. So what this is gonna allow us to do is it's gonna allow us to capture the data written to the stream into byte array, right? So whatever data that's coming from that stream, because it's a URL, so it's a stream, we're gonna write it. We're gonna capture that data in the stream, and then we're gonna capture it as a byte array, which is what this is, like byte array, okay? Because we need to read bytes, if you remember. So we have to return bytes as we're doing here. So that's why we're creating this. So once we open the URL, we're just gonna get all the actual stream from the URL, add them into the stream, and then convert this stream into a byte array so that we can return it like this. So once we have that battery output stream, we're gonna go ahead and open the URL. So let's do a try, and here we're gonna do input stream, and we're gonna do input stream, and we're gonna open the URL. So URL that open stream. Okay. So once we open this URL, we're gonna get all of the stream. And we need to take this stream, put it in here as an output stream, and then so that we can get it as byte array, which is what we're returning here. And you're gonna see how this is gonna happen in a minute. So once we have the try block, let's say we want to, we need to get the bytes read, which is gonna be integer, and we also need to get so I'm gonna have to explain this a little bit. So this right here is the URL, right? So the URL is a big stream. So we have to say, hey, when the stream is open, I want you to read that many bytes from the stream once at a time, right? We're not gonna try to read the whole thing because we can't. So we're gonna read it piece by piece, right? So we're gonna say we want to read, so we're gonna do a chunk, right? So let's call this chunk. This is how much we're gonna read every time, and that's gonna be new byte. And let's say we want to read usually like 1024. You have to be careful with that number. Depends on how many bytes you want to read at a time, so you have to at least know what kind of data you're receiving so that you can set an appropriate number. But it's not like super sensitive or anything like that. So I'm gonna tell it, hey, from this stream that I opened from the URL, read that many bytes at a time. Okay, so if I'm gonna do something at a time, that's where I need a loop. So I'm gonna say let's do, so for, let's say bytes read, as long as this is the input stream that read, and I'm gonna pass in the chunk, and I think I have too many here, and I need to do as long as this is bigger than 0. So bigger than 0. So we're gonna keep doing this until we're done. Okay, so then our while loop. So here I'm just gonna say call the output stream, which is this, and I'm just gonna say put those in. So right. So well, let me go back once, and I need this one right here. Okay, so because we don't get all the bytes all at once, right? We're looping. We have to say, hey, give me these many bytes into this byte output stream, which means I'm gonna read this URL. I'm gonna have a long stream of data. I need to capture this data as a byte array output stream. So all I have to do is I'm saying, hey, give me that many bytes every time we loop through this until there's no more, right? So that's what this while loop is doing. So here I'm gonna say, give me, so I'm gonna say write that many. So write this chunk, okay, which I know I'm gonna be reading from here, right? Starting from 0, right? And this is how many, this is the length of everything that I'm reading. So here I'm gonna pass in the bytes read, okay? So this is very important. So again, what I'm doing here is I'm gonna read this chunk, okay? So I'm telling the on the right method, I say, I'm gonna read this chunk, right? Which is 1024 bytes. This is the bytes that I'm gonna read starting from 0. So for instance, if on the first looping, starting from position 0, right? I read 1024, right? Say, okay, which is what I'm doing here, right? I said, I'm gonna be reading 1024, and this is the byte. So I'm gonna give it the bytes, okay? And then I'm gonna say, put this as position 0, like this, okay? Like that. So on the next loop, it's gonna say, hey, go again from, oops, how do I do this? Space. So again, it's gonna start from the same position because this loop is the first loop is over, right? So I have that many bytes written, bytes written. So the next loop is gonna be, oh, from position 0, again, read the same amount, so 1024, and this is the bytes. This is how many. Okay, so which is gonna be the next 1024 bytes. Okay, and it's gonna keep doing this until there's no more, because I'm reading 1024 from the whole thing, right? So this input stream is coming from the URL. So from that stream, I'm reading that many bytes until there's no more. Okay, and I'm telling it the bytes that I'm reading. So this number right here is 0 because it's an int. So it's gonna, hey, read the first 1024, read the next one. So that's what this is doing. Delete this. Okay, so I'm saying I'm gonna read that many. Here they are. Here where you start putting them. So once this is done, right, I'm gonna just return this stream. So instead of calling file, now I don't need to do that, and I just say to byte array. So we're done. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. So whenever we get a user, they didn't pass in a specific image, we have to go get one from the internet because we're gonna set their image path URL to point to a specific URL from RoboHash. So we're gonna say, hey, once this is calling this method right here, well, this is not gonna be a path param. Okay, so we're gonna give him this specific URL, and we're gonna look at that once we create the new users and everything. And we're telling it this is gonna producing image JPEG value. This is important. Okay, so we're just gonna open the URL, create this so we can add the byte in, and then just convert everything to a battery, which is what we need to return right here. Okay, so that's what we're doing here in this method.